The most dangerous weapon humanity ever pointed at us wasn't a fleet, wasn't a superweapon. It was a smiling waitress eating something that our doctors classified as poison. My name is Vex Orun, and before you ask, no, I do not enjoy telling this story. I am required to tell it. It has become mandatory reading in 17 academies across the Threndel Compact, filed under a category that used to be called First Contact Protocols, and is now, thanks to One Woman and One Spoon, filed under Things We Should Have Left Alone. Let me back up. The Threndel Compact is old. Older than your recorded history. Older than most of your planet's mountain ranges, if my geologists are to be believed, and they usually are, since we have conquered, catalogued, or politely annexed over 1,200 worlds. We are, by any reasonable measure, the dominant civilization in this quadrant of space. We have fleets, we have doctrines, we have an entire division dedicated to ranking planets by how badly they want to kill the things living on them, and in that division, there exists a list. The list has 1,206 entries. Only one of them is marked in red. That entry is Earth. Now you would think, given our reputation for being thorough, terrifying, and occasionally quite rude about it, that Earth's red marking came from something dramatic, a superweapon. A hidden fleet, maybe a secret alliance with some ancient godlike intelligence buried under the ice caps. I wish I could tell you that. It would make my job easier, and it would make this story sound less humiliating for my entire species. No, Earth got its red marking because of gravity, weather, bacteria, parasites, temperature swings, an unreasonable number of ways to be eaten alive, and something our scientists still refer to, in hushed tones, as the mood swings of an entire ecosystem. Every other death world we catalogued had one or two lethal quirks. Earth had a checklist, and the checklist kept growing every time we sent another probe. So when the Compact decided it was time, after decades of watching your species argue, invent, bicker, and somehow also build spacecraft, to attempt a formal cultural exchange with Earth, there was, shall we say, some tension in the planning committee. Half the council wanted to send an armada. The other half wanted to send an apology. What we actually sent was Threx Calvorn. If you have never seen a Threndel warrior at full ceremonial height, let me paint the picture for you without the word I am forbidden to use. He was enormous. 11 feet of layered plating, muscle and quiet, simmering pride. A veteran of 11 campaigns, undefeated in single combat, decorated so many times that his ceremonial sash needed its own support structure. Threx did not walk into a room so much as inform the room that he had arrived. He was, by every metric our species uses to measure greatness, the perfect representative to send to a death world. Strong, disciplined, unshakable. We assumed Earth would send someone similar. A general, perhaps, a champion. Someone with medals and scars and a stare that could curdle milk from across a battlefield. Instead, Earth sent us a paper, a single, unassuming government document, 3 pages long, naming their chosen delegate for the exchange. Her name was Priya Okafor. Her listed occupation was, and I want you to sit with this for a moment, because we certainly did not, diner waitress, part-time. There was no military rank. No title, no list of accomplishments, no medals, no campaigns. Just a photo of a young woman in an apron holding a coffee pot mid-laugh, like the camera had interrupted a joke she was telling someone off-screen. Our diplomatic corps had a small crisis about it. Some thought it was an insult. Some thought it was a trap. One particularly nervous analyst, a small twitchy attaché named Bissell, suggested it might be a coded threat, that perhaps diner waitress was some sort of human military designation we hadn't decrypted yet. It was not. She really was just a waitress. We had no idea at the time that this was somehow worse. Section 2. Arrival and Expectations. The meeting was set aboard Threshold Station, a neutral outpost built specifically for delicate first contact scenarios, floating quietly between our territory and yours, all polished metal, soft lighting, and enough ceremonial protocol to make a coronation look casual. Threx arrived first, because of course he did. Champions do not wait. Champions are waited for. He walked the center corridor in full ceremonial armor, each footstep landing with a deliberate, resonant thud, timed, I promise you, to sound intimidating. Behind him marched 12 honor guards, and behind them, myself, carrying the translation equipment and the crushing weight of expectation. We had prepared everything, a ceremonial combat ring in case Earth's delegate wanted to test our champion's strength, which our customs consider a sign of respect, a feast of ceremonial delicacies, meant to demonstrate hospitality while also, subtly, reminding our guest of our resources. An honor guard trained specifically in intimidation posturing, which involves a great deal of synchronized breathing and slow, deliberate blinking that I promise looks terrifying in person. We were ready for a warrior. We were ready for a diplomat. We were ready, honestly, for almost anything except what walked through that door 23 minutes late. Priya Okafor arrived wearing a gray hooded sweatshirt with a faded logo I later learned belonged to something called a community college, holding a paper cup with steam rising from a small hole in the lid, and chewing gum with the unbothered rhythm of someone waiting for a bus, not someone standing in front of an 11-foot alien warrior in full ceremonial battle dress. She looked at Threx. She looked at the honor guard. She looked at the ceremonial combat ring, still being polished by two very nervous attendants. Then she looked at me because apparently my translation collar made me look approachable, and said, "And I am translating this as precisely as our equipment allows. Sorry I'm late, the bus was a whole situation." The bus was a whole situation. I did not know what a bus was. I still do not fully understand why it required a situation. But I understood, immediately in the marrow of whatever passes for marrow in my species, that something about this exchange was going to go very differently than planned. Section 3. The culture shock begins. Bissell, my attaché, the twitchy one, had prepared an entire folder of protocols for how a human delegate might react to Threx's presence. Protocol 1 covered fainting. Protocol 2 covered hostile posturing. Protocol 3, my personal favorite in hindsight, covered what to do if the human delegate attempted to prostrate themselves in awe. None of the protocols covered what Priya actually did, which was set her paper cup down on the ceremonial podium. A podium that had been blessed by 3 separate religious orders back home, and say, "So is he the strong one? He looks strong. Hi, big guy." She waved at Threx. Threx did not wave back, because Threx does not know how, and also because Threx was still processing the fact that a being roughly 1/5 his mass had just called him big guy, instead of falling to her knees. Over the next several minutes, Priya proceeded to violate what my later report to the council listed as 17 distinct sacred protocols. She sat on the edge of the ceremonial dais, which is reserved exclusively for beings of ambassadorial rank. She asked Bissell, sincerely, if the honor guard's synchronized blinking was some kind of bit, which required us later to explain what a bit was, a conversation that took 40 minutes and ended with Bissell having what I can only describe as a small emotional collapse in the corner of the observation deck. She asked if there was coffee on the station. There was not. She looked personally wounded by this. Meanwhile, Threx stood in silence, arms crossed, radiating the kind of controlled menace that has in the past caused entire delegations from other species to request immediate ceasefires before negotiations even began. It is a look he trained for years to perfect. It has never, not once, failed to make an impression. Priya glanced at it, shrugged, and asked if he was cold, because apparently the armor looked kind of stiff. I want to be clear. Our species does not startle easily. We have stared down black hole event horizons for research purposes. We have negotiated with hive minds that communicate exclusively through pheromone bursts that also happen to be mildly toxic. We are professionals, and yet every single one of us in that room felt, at the same moment, a very specific and very new kind of fear. It was the fear of not being taken seriously by something that should, by every metric we understood, have been terrified of us. Section 4. The reveal of the Deathworld reputation. Let me pause the scene here, because you need context for what happens next, And honestly, I need a moment to compose myself before we get to the spoon. When the Compact first cataloged Earth as a death world, our scientists assumed the danger was purely biological. Gravity slightly higher than optimal. Weather patterns capable of leveling cities without warning. A food chain so aggressively competitive that nearly every organism on the planet appeared to be either actively hunting something or actively avoiding being hunted, often simultaneously. Then we started reading your history. Your species has been through ice ages, plagues, famines, and what your own records call several thousand years of mostly just fighting each other for no clearly documented reason. And somehow, after every single one of these events, you built something new. Cities, songs, jokes. Your species seems to treat catastrophe less like an ending and more like an inconvenience that interrupted a story you were already telling. Our psychological division found this deeply unsettling. They found something else, too, buried in a set of intercepted transmissions we were never supposed to obtain, recordings of humans in what your species calls emergency rooms, and combat zones, and disaster response units, laughing. Not the strained laugh of a being trying to mask fear, genuine, full-bodied laughter. In the middle of the worst moments your species experiences, our analysts had no framework for this. In our culture, laughter during danger is either a mental malfunction or a declaration of dominance. We assumed it must be one of those two things. It took us decades to understand it was neither. It was just a thing your species does, apparently, to survive being alive on your particular rock. Then there was the substance. You call it coffee. Our biologists nearly filed an emergency report classifying it as a chemical weapon before realizing, with mounting horror, that your species voluntarily consumes it daily, sometimes multiple times a day, and builds entire cultural rituals around its acquisition. An entire industry exists solely to distribute a mildly toxic stimulant to a species that already runs on almost no sleep, high stress, and a startling tolerance for pain. Somewhere in one of our earliest planetary assessments, a junior researcher wrote a note that later became somewhat famous internally. It read, and I quote directly because for once quoting feels appropriate, "Recommend immediate reclassification. This species appears to treat exhaustion, danger, and poison as background noise. Proceed with extreme caution." We did not proceed with extreme caution. We sent Threx Calvorn to a diner waitress with a paper cup of coffee, and honestly, in hindsight, we deserved everything that happened next. Section 5. The demonstration goes wrong for the aliens. Threx, to his credit, tried to salvage the situation the only way he knew how. Our culture resolves disrespect, real or perceived, through what we call a trial, a structured test of strength, skill, or endurance conducted with honor, witnessed by all parties, resulting in a clear and undisputed winner. He stepped forward, cleared his throat with a sound like a landslide starting somewhere deep in his chest plate, and addressed Priya directly through the translation collar. "You do not fear me," he said. And it was not quite a question. Priya thought about it for a second, picked her coffee back up, and said, "Should I? I am undefeated in 11 campaigns." Cool. I've been undefeated at my job for 4 years, and this one time a guy tried to fight me over a pancake order, so, we all got our things. Bissell made a small noise that I believe was the sound of a mind quietly rebooting. Threx, undeterred, proposed a trial. A test, he explained, so that Earth might understand the caliber of warrior the Compact had sent, and so that our species might understand the caliber of representative Earth had sent in return. Priya considered this, glanced around the room, spotted the ceremonial feast table our attendants had prepared, still steaming with delicacies imported from 6 different worlds, specifically chosen to appear impressive and vaguely threatening, and said, "Okay, sure, eating contest. Winner gets bragging rights." The room went quiet. Our species does have eating trials, historically, used to test endurance and resistance to poison during a much more brutal era of our history. It felt, to us, like an appropriate compromise, something dignified, something with rules. something that would let Threx demonstrate his strength without anyone getting physically hurt. We had, of course, no idea what Priya intended to eat. The attendants scrambled to prepare a suitable dish, something ceremonial, something with weight and meaning, and in the confusion, someone, and to this day I do not know who, thought it would be diplomatic to include a small side dish from Earth's own recommended cultural samples, something the human delegation had sent ahead as an example of their cuisine, something our food safety division had cleared without, in retrospect, fully reading the accompanying notes. It was a small, unassuming bowl of a dark orange substance labeled, in your language, Auntie Grace's Ghost Pepper Chili, Level Extreme. Do not serve to children or the faint of heart. Our translation software rendered this, somewhat generously, as spiced regional stew. We had no idea what we had just placed on the table. Section 6. The spoon moment. I need you to understand something about the room in that moment. Threx stood on one side of the ceremonial table, having selected a dish from his own homeworld. A rich, layered protein compound that our warriors traditionally eat before battle to demonstrate resilience against its natural mild toxicity. It is considered a badge of honor to finish a full portion without visible discomfort. Priya stood on the other side, looking down at a small bowl of what our records now describe, and I am reading directly from the incident report, as an unidentified orange substance emitting a heat signature inconsistent with its serving temperature. She picked up a spoon, just a spoon, small, metal, utterly unremarkable in every possible way, except that in this story, this exact spoon has since been requested by 3 separate museums, and I am told there is now a replica sold in a gift shop on your planet, which feels like an appropriate way for your species to commemorate almost anything. She scooped a spoonful of Auntie Grace's Ghost Pepper Chili, Level Extreme, and, without ceremony, without hesitation, without so much as a change in her breathing pattern, put it in her mouth. Our medical sensors, which were monitoring both participants for the trial, registered an immediate and significant spike in her internal temperature, heart rate, and what our systems flagged as acute chemical distress consistent with poisoning. Bissell screamed, "I want that on the record." He screamed, dropped his datapad, and began shouting for the medical team in a pitch I did not know his species could produce. Threx froze mid-bite of his own dish, his ceremonial confidence cracking for the first time in the entire encounter, watching this small, unarmored human calmly experiencing what our sensors were describing in real time as a level of internal chemical distress that would have hospitalized one of our own soldiers. Priya's eyes watered, her nose ran, her face flushed a deep, alarming shade of red that our color charts associate almost exclusively with severe allergic reactions, and she said, through what our translator rendered as clear discomfort, "Oh yeah, that's a good batch." Then she took another bite. Our medical team stormed the room. Our honor guard broke formation, something that had never happened in station history, several of them reaching for emergency countermeasures designed to treat chemical poisoning. Bissell was on his knees, actively hyperventilating, asking someone, anyone, to explain what was happening. Priya, sniffling, wiping her eyes with the back of her sleeve, waved everyone off with the spoon still in her other hand. "Guys, it's chilly," she said. "It's not gonna kill me. My aunt makes it hotter than this for Sunday dinner. Y'all okay?" Threx, our undefeated champion of 11 campaigns, set down his own dish, untouched. "You are not affected," he said, and this time it absolutely was not a statement of fact. It was a plea for someone to please tell him this made sense. "Oh no, I'm definitely affected," Priya said, gesturing at her own watering eyes with the spoon. "This is rough, actually. Like an 8 out of 10. But that's kind of the fun part." The fun part. She called being internally lit on fire the fun part. I watched, in that moment, an entire room full of hardened, decorated, battle-tested representatives of our species come to a slow, horrified, collective understanding, and I felt it happen in myself as well. A cold, creeping realization that we had cataloged your planet's gravity, your weather, your bacteria, and your parasites, and somehow entirely missed the actual threat. The threat was never going to hurt us. The threat was that it simply would not stop. Section 7. the fallout and realization. It took several hours for the room to fully recover its composure. Bissell required a mild sedative and a lengthy conversation with our station counselor, during which, I am told, he kept repeating the phrase, "She called it fun," in increasingly distressed tones. Threx requested a private audience with Priya once the medical team confirmed she was in fact entirely fine, if a little sweaty, and had in fact finished the rest of the bowl while waiting for everyone else to stop panicking. I attended as translator. Threx approached this conversation the way he approached everything, with tremendous, unshakable formality, kneeling slightly to bring himself closer to her eye level, a gesture our culture reserves for addressing beings of significant honor. "I do not understand your species," he said, and I translated it exactly as delivered, because I did not think softening it would help either of us. Priya, sipping the coffee someone had finally managed to synthesize for her using our best approximation of your recipe, considered this for a moment. "Yeah, that tracks," she said. "Most people don't, not at first. You showed no fear. You experienced clear physical distress and called it enjoyable. You violated 17 of our sacred protocols within the first 5 minutes of this meeting, according to my attaché, who has since had to lie down." "I really am sorry about the bus thing," Priya said, and I want it noted that she seemed genuinely sorry about this specific detail and nothing else. "Your species terrifies mine," Threx admitted. And for a being of his rank, his campaigns, his decorations, this admission cost him something visible, a small crack in decades of practiced composure. "We catalogued your gravity, your weather, your bacteria. We did not catalogue this." Priya set down her cup, and for the first time since she'd walked in 23 minutes late, chewing gum, entirely unbothered, she looked at Threx with something that read, even through our translation software, as genuine kindness. "Look, big guy," she said, "it's not that we're not scared. We're scared plenty, trust me. We just, I don't know, we don't let being scared stop us from finishing dinner. Or the shift. Or the day. Bad stuff happens, and then more stuff happens after that, and somewhere in there you gotta eat, you gotta laugh at something, or you just kind of fall apart. So we don't fall apart. We just keep going and make jokes about it later." Threx was quiet for a long moment. "That is either the bravest philosophy I have ever encountered," he said finally, "or the most horrifying." "Probably both," Priya said, and smiled. "Most good things are." I recorded this exchange, word for word, and submitted it to the council upon our return, along with a formal recommendation that we revise our entire threat assessment framework for Deathworld classifications. Because gravity and bacteria, it turns out, were never really the point. The point was a species that had learned, somewhere in 10,000 years of catastrophe after catastrophe, to treat disaster as an inconvenience rather than an ending, and to reach for a spoon instead of a weapon, because at the end of the day, dinner still needed to happen. The council did not enjoy this recommendation. They implemented it anyway. Section 8. Closing narration. So that is the story of how the Threndel Compact sent its greatest living warrior, undefeated across 11 campaigns, decorated more times than his ceremonial sash could comfortably display, to meet humanity's chosen representative. And that representative reached, without hesitation, without ceremony, and without the faintest awareness that she was doing anything remarkable at all, for a spoon. Earth's file has been updated 4 times since that meeting. Each revision is longer than the last. Each revision includes a formal warning that reads, roughly translated, subjects have been observed treating extreme physical distress as recreational, approach all cultural exchanges with extreme caution, and, if possible, snacks. Threx still visits Earth occasionally, as part of what has since become an actual ongoing exchange program, one built not on ceremony or intimidation, but on something considerably stranger and considerably more effective, curiosity. Bissell has requested a transfer to a quieter division. I do not blame him. And Priya, last I checked, still works at the same diner, still takes the same bus that is, apparently, still a whole situation on a semi-regular basis, and still keeps a spoon in her apron pocket, which the Compact's intelligence division now, only half-jokingly, refers to as a potential deterrent weapon in official briefings. I laughed the first time I read that line in a report. Then I remembered the sound of Bissell screaming, and I stopped laughing, because honestly, they might be right.